Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the totally awesome podcast, not even doing a countdown. My name's JoshAgeddon, and I'm joined by your Colonial champion, Sean McCarty.
Hello, everyone. I assume I'm here for two reasons. Number one, as moral support for what we are about to experience. And number two, because JoshAgeddon has realized that I am the draw here.
Yeah.
That I am the ratings. So even though I have made it very clear my issues with TAW, he still cannot help but bring me onto his program.
Yeah, I'm like Tony Khan and CM Punk. CM Punk's a giant pain in the ass, but he's the top draw, so I have to keep fucking bringing him back in.
You hate to see it.
Yeah.
This is about you today, sir.
Okay.
I am not going to steal your spotlight.
Okay, so this is like an emergency, just out of the blue TAP episode, because usually we just do like a movie, like me and whoever does a spoiler talk about a movie, or like something cool happens, or we do a wrestling review. This is a teeny bit off the beaten path, but to set the stage...
Well, is it though? I mean, it's kind of something that has been brewing for some time between all of us.
Yeah.
And I think you have finally just crossed that finish line that Skylar and I finished a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Months ago, in fact.
Yeah, so...
but why don't you tell them, the people, what we're talking about?
So, if anyone listening to this has not subscribed to the Court Martial podcast, first off, how dare you?
That's right.
Also...
We're in a promotional war, but he tells you to subscribe to my material.
Absolutely. But real quick...
the balls, ladies and gentlemen.
Real quick, how many subscribers... I'm going to look this up right now. Court Martial Podcast has 306 subscribers. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you. We very much appreciate it. It's been quite a hell of a lot of growth in just a 2.5-year program.
Yeah.
But
and they've really, like... And again, go and subscribe. They've been rising, and they're honestly one of the best wrestling podcasts. I'm not just saying that because Sean's my friend and Skylar's my friend. They're legitimately fun to listen to.
I appreciate that. You know, we try to make it entertaining for, it's a podcast made by Smarks for Smarks, but we're really for all wrestling fans who might want to get a listen to just two fans' opinions about the state of the world as we know it. We get to do some fun stuff like fantasy booking, just like they do here in SCCG.
Oh, yeah.
Which was inspired by the Court Martial podcast, but let's not pull threads here at this moment. But it's a good time, but that's really where this started, was a diatribe that I went on about the recent events regarding CM Punk and AEW.
Yeah.
And without getting into the details of that, because I've already explained it, why don't you tell me and the people what you imbibed from the discussion?
Well, again, for those of you that aren't really aware of like the dynamic, because we do shows all the time. Sean and Skylar are constantly on my show, I'm constantly on theirs. Basically, our gimmick is Sean's the neutral one, I'm the AEW apologist, and Skylar is the WWE apologist. We've got that groundwork set, right?
I would say that foundation is more or less correct. I mean, I usually just shit on everything. So
yeah, basically.
But I'm indiscriminate in my shitting.
Yes, it doesn't matter what it is, he'll shit on it.
That's right.
Got
a lot of feces up in this bitch.
So...
Coming out of both holes.
Verbal effluvia or diarrhea.
That's right. Subscribe to the Court Martial podcast.
Yeah, for more verbal effluvia. So basically, okay, and to a degree, it is true. Although I will say, we are like not the most tribalistic people, because all three of us, me, Sean, and Skylar, we're tribalistic about one thing. We want to watch good wrestling, right?
Yes.
That's what we want. Yes. We're gonna shit on what sucks, and we're gonna praise what's good, and we're gonna be meh about what's meh.
Right.
And as the AEW apologist, quote unquote, past couple days, I have come, actually ever since, honestly, and we'll touch on this in a second, AEW Revolution, where things started steadily declining.
2022.
Yes.
You're referring to.
Yeah. I have a concession to make. AEW sucks.
Yeah,
It is hot, flaming garbage.
Why do you say this, Joshua?
And for those of you, like 4 minutes and 30-something seconds into the show that we've been recording, and people have already seen the title. The title's pretty much self-explanatory. I have officially given up. I'm officially tapping out, like the theme of the show, tapping out because it's awful. I've given up on AEW.
Oh, say it ain't so.
And Skylar's going to be so happy because I'm joining his side.
Well, give me some reasons why. What are some of the things that have finally forced you to give up on this promotion?
Okay, so again, like, and imagine, like, not even a year ago, just a couple months ago, WWE was objectively unwatchable. It was absolutely horrid. AEW, even though they did some stupid things from time to time, sometimes more often than not, depending on whatever show we were watching, they at least had momentum. The show had a pulse.
Yes.
There were some things that were good about it. And I latched onto those good things and saying, because I was like, it made me optimistic about the future.
So there was a lot to like about AEW when it started. I just was, you and I, when we did these AEW reviews, we always said there's a fantastic show buried under filler. But that was still the admission of there is a fantastic show in here somewhere. We saw the potential of AEW for quite some time, especially as they built momentum when they got Punk and they got Danielson, and even, I have to concede Omega's title reign. For what it was, Omega at least still carried himself like he thought he was a star. And that is something we did not get during the Adam Page title reign and the more recent shows that may have soured you also on the proposition.
Honestly, like a year ago, like it was around like when WWE came out with Extreme Rules with that terrible, terrible finish to the Roman Reigns Finn Balor match. The show was in the toilet, basically. It was circling the drain. And like, remember Survivor Series with Vince McMahon and the egg?
I was just talking about that to somebody. My folks just watched Red Notice, said it was not that good.
Meanwhile, AEW's over here. They're just turning out quality show after quality show, and then 2022 hit. AEW Revolution sucked. It was okay. It wasn't like the worst thing ever, but it was largely boring. It was one of those shows where the filler overtook the few and far between good things, and it was just mostly, by and large, missable.
It was where the ratio started to slump a little bit as far as quality to just nasty, unwatchable material.
For me, that was a stumble, and it just snowballed into oblivion from then on. Because then I just started noticing, and even then on AEW Revolution, I started noticing patterns. All of these enormous multi-man tag matches where they do 8 trillion moves in 5 seconds, and it's just your eyes glaze over.
Would you like to hear the card for AEW Revolution 2022?
Sure, why not?
Because just to give the people kind of a background as to what you were watching that was causing you a gastric distress.
Yes.
The buy-in had 3 matches. Layla Hirsch defeated Chris Statlander by pin in a 10-minute match.
Wait, okay, real quick, that's an example of me booking better than AEW. Why would you put Layla Hirsch in a 10-minute match? I have not had her in a match in SWCG that's gone longer than like 7 minutes. Because she's green.
They do not know how to capitalize on people's strengths and conceal people's weaknesses. And Tony sets a lot of this talent up to fail in that respect by how he books, because he puts them in positions they shouldn't be in.
Yes, exactly. Because, as MJF said, he's a fucking mark.
But one of the few things he did get right, especially on this show, next match, Hook defeated QT Marshall by submission in a 5-minute match.
How is this booked by the same person? He's so schizophrenic, and we will get to Tony Khan.
Yes. Match 3 of the first of the buy-in, because there were 12 matches on the whole night.
My god.
The House of Black, Malachi Black, Brody King, and Buddy Matthews defeated Pac, Penta Oscuro, and Eric Redbeard with Darth Maul Abrahantes in a 17-minute, 20-second 6-man tag team match.
You know how I'm making Tommy End a serious player on SWCG, and I did it instantly. And I did it instantly.
Yes.
Well, in AEW, he had a semi-decent feud with Cody Rhodes, and then he made a useless stable of like antler people.
Yeah, well,
and that's it.
He had a middling feud with Cody because people were so sick of Cody at that point that Malachi Black it ended up being like less important as just people hating Cody and Brandy. So he wasn't even as important in that feud to get established.
And since then, he's done nothing. He made a trio that's not interesting, and he's just been doing that. But Sean, don't worry, he's in the trios tournament for the trios tag team title. Oh my god.
Good.
Oh my god.
We started.
One of my least favorite things about the show, they threw a championship at it because they hate me.
They do. Eddie Kingston then defeated Chris Jericho by submission in a singles match that actually was not bad.
It was actually pretty good. The first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds were like orgasmic.
Most of Jericho's stuff is cancerous.
Yeah.
But this was okay.
Yeah.
This was okay. But then
oh no.
We get the Jurassic Express defeating Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly and the Young Bucks with Brendan Cutler in a 19-minute three-way tag team match for the AEW World Tag Team Championships.
My head is in my hands right now.
The amount of multi-man matches that this man puts on the show, acting like that is what the people want to see and makes any of them important.
It's too much. It is literally just frosting. I would like to have cake at some point. I'm literally going to vomit from all this frosting.
Yes, please stop with the buttercream.
Please, God. There's too many bodies flying all over the place. Like, it's like, imagine if Avengers Endgame was just like that one large war scene, except that's the entire movie. That's AEW.
Well, and speaking of bodies flying all over the place, the next match was Wardlow defeating Christian Cage, Keith Lee, Orange Cassidy, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Ricky Starks in a Face of the Revolution ladder match, AEW TNT Championship match, also known as the Sonic Ring match.
Too many multi-man matches. What was after that?
Then Jade Cargill kissed Ty Conti. 6 minutes and 50 seconds. And also, I blame Jade Cargill for all of this kissing being acceptable stuff. Now that has become like a part of the wrestling vernacular, like Mickie James was doing it in Impact recently, John Moxley, obviously, while Dildo Boy was jacking off. All of the, I blame Jade Cargill at this moment for this.
I blame Jade Cargill for a lot of things.
Yes, and her stupid manager, smart Mark Sterling. Then we got the other. See, this is the interesting thing. This match, if it had gone shorter, I would have loved more. Punk defeating MJF in a 27-minute dog collar match.
That match was so disappointing.
It was so long.
Yes.
It was so long.
The beginning was good. The ending was great. The middle was like a chasm. You know, the chasm, the uncrossable chasm between heaven and hell that even the angels dare not cross. That was the middle section of this match.
And that is the crazy part about AEW, too, which also always hurts it for me, is every match goes long.
I know. 1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of the 12 matches. 9 out of 12 went over 10 minutes. 9 out of 12 went over 13 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 12 went over 17 minutes.
Oh my god. Know how to balance a show. My god.
And one of those matches was next, which was Dr. Britt Baker defeating Thunder Rosa.
In a terrible match.
But I remember actually not hating that one, but...
The finish, where Thunder Rosa was obviously crawling into position to get her head curb stomped.
Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes.
And the crowd just did not care.
Well, because they knew what was going on later in the night.
Also, speaking of which, Thunder Rosa is injured, so now they're going to have an interim AEW Women's Championship match at All Out. Aren't you excited, Sean?
Get hype.
And it's a 4-person match.
Then,
motherfucker.
I know. And then in one of the...
I hate this company.
Oh, just wait. Because Johnny Johnson Puller defeated Bryan Danielson in a singles match that went 21 minutes. With the second juice of the night, which definitely diminished the effect of juice. Then Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Sting defeated the Andrade Hardy family office of Andrade El Idolo, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy with Jose the assistant.
Jesus Christ.
4 hours into the show.
Jesus Christ.
And then a 26-minute one-on-one match between Adam Page and Adam Cole.
We want Adam.
Yeah.
Where the crowd was jacking themselves off.
So that's where it started.
For me, at least. There were some like little rumblings where there was a few things about AEW where I was like, that could be better. I'm not super crazy. Because it was before that I was like, the Inner Circle sucks, and Jericho is just not interesting anymore. It was this show where I was like, God, this is exhausting to get through.
Well, and at that point, we were still trying to watch the show.
And we were considering, we considered, like, well, even though Skylar was like, fuck this, I hate this company, me and you were like, I mean, they still have momentum. I mean, we'll just count this as like a stumble. Let's see if the next show is better.
Well,
the next show was not better.
Something happened in between those shows that also forced Skylar and I to withdraw.
Yeah. Because that was
the Crown of Thorns incident.
The Crown of Thorns incident, which, okay, I'm a Christian, and I honestly didn't get that offended by it, but I just felt it was more stupid than anything else.
Well, that was my big problem with it. It wasn't the Christian thing. I don't really care about that, to be honest with you. I really don't. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it was going to be in a throwaway match with a throwaway spot that they do every single time they're in the ring together that nobody would pay attention to until Discovery is like, hey, should we renew this company for contract? Oh, well, they did a Crown of Thorns thing that didn't matter and nobody cared. Well, that's grounds for canceling them. So it was really just the pure stupidity of it.
Yeah.
And really, the heat, for me, didn't go on the participants, but onto Tony Khan.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if you allow that kind of shit on your program and you have no regard for what these networks want or will require, especially as there was this gigantic merger that was going to be a little different as far as the attitude of the company and the direction of it going forward, the fact that you allowed that to happen on your show and did nothing about it and said nothing about it that is what offends me.
Yeah.
That was what was offensive to me. So I would no longer give Tony Khan the satisfaction of watching his programs because I cannot endorse Tony Khan, the person, for his sheer stupidity.
And God, do I wish that I listened to you and Skylar, because it was like as soon as you two jumped off the ship started sinking faster. Because then we had Double or Nothing, which is basically their WrestleMania. And my God, that was like one of the first AEW shows where I skipped a match, because we're not going to run through the whole card like we did with Revolution. We get it. They have 8 trillion multi-man matches.
No, the point has been made.
The point has been made, but like that was a big giant war 8-person match where they were fighting all over the arena because they have it on every single pay-per-view, every single Dynamite, every single Rampage, and I was just like, oh my God. And I just skipped it. And I went back and looked, and it was like a 30-minute match. Why?
No.
Christ! Stop! And I sent my notes to you guys, and I was like, the show was okay. It was just there was too much shit going on. 5 out of 10. And you could get the sense in my notes where, like, God, Joshua, it's just being beaten out of Joshua. And I even said, and there was a triple threat tag team match, and I'm not naming all the competitors because I'm tired. Which got a pop out of you.
Yeah, I do remember that. Because, again, the point was made just by reading the Revolution card. And the fact is, calling Tony Khan and Mark Booker insults Mark Bookers.
Yeah.
Because there are people who are Marks who can book circles around what Tony Khan is doing.
Yeah, and we are 3 of them, including Skylar.
Yes, I would like to think that we are holding our own in that respect. But it's not even just about us.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are easily thousands of Marks out there who could book better than Tony Khan is booking.
I could dig up my grandmother, and she could probably come up with a more coherent, better wrestling show.
Wow, that got dark.
Not even show AEW. That got dark elevation. Anyway.
In the most literal sense.
You know that show no one watches? One of the 18 shows Tony Khan books that no one watches?
Well, it's dark elevation because you're literally exhuming the body.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's not even talk about the YouTube shows like we're supposed to act like they're important.
Oh, Christ.
And they're not.
And
nobody watches them, and hardly anybody even watches Rampage because they film it after Dynamite, and everybody's so exhausted that nobody has any energy for it.
And then, like, as soon as Double or Nothing ended, then I don't blame AEW for this. It was just unfortunate. they had injury after injury after injury. And it was literally, I made this joke several times. It was like the wrestling gods were pissed about how shitty things were getting in both companies, and they were literally just taking out the hatchet and knocking some of them dead. Because, like, how dare you make wrestling look like shit? How dare you? Have you seen that meme of the Grim Reaper going to this last door, and the previous four doors, there's blood coming out of it? That's what it was like.
It really was. Like, for a period of 2 months, it was just bodies falling.
Yeah.
Right. And as a result,
we got Forbidden Door.
We got Forbidden, well, because Punk left. And also, before we talk about Forbidden Door, should we talk about the alienation of certain people prior to this point, like Cody and MJF?
Yeah.
Because that's a really crucial part of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
The fact that, and I'm not saying it was Tony Khan who was responsible, but I think Cody got conflict with the executive vice presidents, the Bucks and Omega, and Cody was becoming a bit insufferable, and everybody hated Brandy. And one of the best workers in AEW was Cody. And of course, the spotlight couldn't be on Cody, even if he didn't turn heel, because they couldn't have that. So that's why they just decided not to renew Cody, considering that he was the toxic one. Then MJF, Punk comes in and makes stupid money. MJF is one of the only people who statistically was drawing similar numbers to Punk. The only one who, and you can look at the numbers, you can look segment by segment. MJF drew. No matter what he was doing, people were interested in what he was doing. He said, I want Punk money. Tony Khan said no, because you've got, whatever it was, 2 more years on your contract. And now they've alienated him out of the picture.
Yeah.
And then then the injuries started happening.
Yep. And it just started piling up. And then we got Forbidden Door, which was ass. Because it was honestly a show where they had to reshuffle the card so many times that it was a mess. It was a mess. And the person they put the interim world title belt on was Jon Moxley.
Well, there was no way that they were going to be able to keep Tanahashi here for an extended period of time until Punk got back. There was no other move to do that. I feel like defaulting to Moxley wasn't the move, because you're, once again, just targeting the audience you already have. And but at the same time, Danielson was hurt at this time. I was talking to Skylar about this the other day. Who else do you put it on? Who's ready for it? I feel like Moxley, in a lot of ways, was the only choice, unless you were going to put it on, like, Jericho.
Ugh, no.
Exactly.
Ugh.
But at least Jericho and Okada would have been halfway interesting.
Yeah.
But in any case.
And Forbidden Door, most of what I had a problem with Forbidden Door was that it was just a mess because I had to reshuffle it so many times. And the first half of the show was just throwing everything at the wall and nothing sticking, and then the second half of the show was actually semi-decent. And then...
What was it, like 2/3 of the way through the show was the first singles match?
Yeah, pretty much. And surprise, with the first singles match, the show got better.
Who would have thought?
Substantially.
Yeah.
And then, after this, so we're getting ready for All Out. Jon Moxley is the interim world champion. And then Vince McMahon has to step aside. This was actually a huge turning point in me saying I'm done with AEW for the most part. Vince McMahon got caught with his cock in someone else's mouth, basically.
$20 million worth.
$20 million worth of his cock in someone's mouth. And so Vince McMahon is Dunskies. He's gone. Completely out of the company. Triple H...
Although he's still the majority shareholder.
Yeah, that is true, but...
He's gone, but he's not gone, but he's gone.
So Triple H is in charge of creative, which is something we've all been pining for like a decade now. And then Triple Stephanie. Triple Stephanie. Stephanie McMahon and Nick Khan are the CEOs. And all of a sudden, surprise, surprise, the show gets better. We get a banger in SummerSlam. SummerSlam was awesome.
SummerSlam was surprisingly good, because I think Triple H knew he had to go out there and make a statement. And I'm pretty sure he did. Now, not everything on that show was perfect.
Yeah. And then I started noticing, even before SummerSlam, when Vince was still in charge, his last couple months, there were pay-per-views Backlash. I'm not calling it WrestleMania Backlash. Triple H, please just return it back to being Backlash, for the love of God. So we had Backlash, then we had Money in the Bank, we had Hell in a Cell. All of those shows were, barely 3 hours.
Yeah.
Which is...
True. They were actually, toning it down a bit.
Yeah, and which is smart because you have too much going on. You're just going to completely exhaust and just grind your audience to the bone. So I was like, wow, WWE shows are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and it's making their shows better and more easy to sit through. Meanwhile, AEW is having shows that are still going on now as we speak that started 10 years ago.
5 hours.
Oh my god.
Including the buy-in.
Including the buy-in. So, right there I'm noticing, like, WWE is starting to get better, and then when Triple H took over, they just started leapfrogging AEW. Like...
And I think the most noticeable change wasn't even necessarily WWE just slightly doing better. And while we're on the subject, before I continue the rest of my point, one of the things I would love for Triple H to change is to get rid of gimmick pay-per-views.
Yes, I would agree.
No more Money in the Bank. Sorry, it's done.
Yeah, they killed that concept.
It's done. You know, go back to specialty match. Make Hell in a Cell mean something again. Mm-hmm. You know, just get rid of it. Just be done with it.
The one that I would keep would be Extreme Rules because you can have multiple different stipulation matches on that are different. So
that's true. I mean, if there is one where you're going to just overload it with furniture.
And of course, the Royal Rumble and Elimination Chamber.
Right. And although I wouldn't even mind going back to No Way Out and just having the Elimination Chamber on No Way Out.
Yeah, that would be cool. I would be down with that.
Instead of calling it the name of the match.
Yeah.
Because like TLC, that name never sat with me. I hated it every single time.
#, bring back Armageddon.
Yes, Armageddon was the best.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that wonderful song that it came to. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of it. But the point I'm making here is the most noticeable change wasn't necessarily the moves that WWE was putting on their show, but it was more the sense that you got from AEW, the panic that they no longer had the handicap of Vince McMahon creating an unwatchable show.
Exactly. I mean, and this right here, this was honestly my tipping point. Because for the first time in, God, I cannot even remember, a couple weeks ago, I sat down and watched an entire episode of Raw from beginning to end. A 3-hour episode of Raw, which right there, I know that's a USA Network thing, and Triple H doesn't have that much control over it, but I would love for Raw to go back to 2 hours.
Me too.
But even then, I watched all 3 hours of Raw. I think it was the second Raw after SummerSlam where we had Ciampa versus Bobby Lashley for the U.S. title, which was a great match. That was a great match.
Yes.
And I didn't get bored throughout the entire... There were a few things I wasn't super crazy about, but I watched the show and I was entertained all the way through. And then, not even joking, this past Monday, I watched another episode of Raw all the way through, and there were 3 pay-per-view quality matches on there. 3 really good matches on that show. When's the last time there was 1 really good match on Raw?
God.
It's been a while.
Christ, I don't even remember. Michaels the Hardy? 07?
That was 08, but yeah, like, it's been a while.
It's been a minute.
And they've had and this past Raw had 3 really good matches. And then, like, right there, I was able to stomach and sit through 6 hours of WWE. And I was fine. I didn't get bored. In fact, I kind of wanted to watch a little bit more because what was happening on the show was interesting. A couple weeks ago, I watched AEW Dynamite. And 30 minutes in, I got bored and turned it off. What does that tell you?
It tells me that we've had 3 years of literally the exact same shit.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody who has any sort of importance or carries any weight on that show is either adequately featured, or the people that are adequately featured are the ones who are the executive vice presidents who are basically forcing themselves to be the most important people on the program, regardless of whether more people come to watch or not.
Once again, I'm the quote-unquote AEW apologist, and I was able to watch 6 hours of WWE and not get bored. I watched 30 minutes of AEW and I'm already tapping out.
Yeah, and I just because I'm going to take any opportunity to knock Jericho, I can. A lot of that has to do with Chris Jericho. He has been the ratings dropper for AEW for a very long time. Everything that he's leached on to anything that has been popular and sucked the absolute life out of it as including the fans. And this vain motherfucker, instead of it started with him. Sorry, I guess I'm going to go on a rant here.
Yeah.
I don't mean to jack your program, but I have a little...
It's all right. It's all right. Go ahead. But I just want to say Chris Jericho's so fat that the ratings are crumbling under his weight.
Well, seriously, even though he did get in shape, which I do respect...
He did. I do respect that as well.
I respect that he shaped up, but that doesn't change the fact that this arrogant motherfucker came in and said, at the beginning of AEW, said, I'm the Hulk Hogan in 1994. I'm really important because I'm going to bring AEW to the promised land and all that bullshit that he hoisted over there. And what we've seen since is him literally take any talent that has had any talent and suck it dry and siphon it because Chris Jericho needs to remain relevant. And he shits on people like Jim Cornette for calling out the fact that Jericho is a leech to AEW and has done probably more harm than good, all things considered. Between the inner circle, he has gotten a grand total of 0 people over with him being associated with them over the past 10 years. Ask Fandango, who is where, by the way.
I have no idea.
Exactly.
In a ditch decomposing somewhere, probably.
Yeah, seriously, dance rotting. And, but look at the names. MJF got over in spite of that year long he spent fighting Chris Jericho with this pigs in the freezer match.
Oh my
and
God.
The dinner debonair, let's not forget. And
blood and guts.
Yeah, blood and guts, and for however long he did that. Eddie Kingston hasn't been the same since he wrestled Jericho. That match we just talked about. He forced Jericho to tap, and it killed his career. and Cody could never compete for the AEW Championship again after it. That was probably the only Jericho match that was palatable. Because then he got into a feud with Orange Cassidy.
Yeah.
Who has done wonders for AEW. And it's the silliness and Jericho getting dumped in the mimosa vat. And instead of bringing the AEW talent that needed someone like Chris Jericho to bring them up to his level, he sank down to their level. And I have no respect for that. Knowing what to do and deciding it doesn't matter anyway. If you're a kid who's performing, doing the playground politics like the Young Bucks, right? You almost can't fault them for that because they don't know any better. And even when they've been taught, sure, they've been ignorant and they're in their 30s and, obviously they have something. But when you know how to do it right, have done it right, and been successful in doing it right, and then you just shit all over that by doing this reinvention thing because you got to stay hip with the kids, man, and do your crappy music that honestly is a disservice to rock and roll everywhere, and then have the vanity to sit there and whether you're babyface or a heel, sit there and make sure that they play your theme twice so you can jack yourself off while the fans chant your theme.
Oh, God. Oh, my God. Every time he comes out, I mute it and I look away because every single fat fuck that's in the audience singing along to his song terribly makes me want to gouge my eyes out. It is such palpable cringe.
And let's not forget that half of them are planted there.
Yeah.
And the other part of this, too, the worst part of all of this is that Jericho now shows up on television, and it goes from 900,000 viewers to 712,000 viewers. He is responsible for a quarter of their audience dipping.
And I might be part of that, honestly.
Because, and honestly, if I saw Jericho on TV, I would not care. I would probably flip over to watch a rerun of The Price is Right more than I would care to watch Chris Jericho. And I don't care if Bob Barker's hosting or not. I really wouldn't even care who's hosting. Because they would be more, no matter how dry and unlaughable their jokes are, they're still more interesting and more entertaining than Chris Jericho is.
Yeah.
Jericho has no sport left in him. He's not entertaining. And he can't really wrestle anymore either. I'd be afraid to wrestle Chris Jericho at this point. Because, have you watched the last few matches? He scares me.
No, I have not, because I have zero interest.
He scares me sometimes. Like, his stuff hits, but barely.
Remember, even though it wasn't his fault, like when he, I forget what pay-per-view it was. I think it was Full Gear when he was supposed to do that lion salt, and the person was too late to punch him, and he was just sitting there.
Oh, that was the MMA guy.
Yeah.
Who I don't remember the name of.
Stuff like that, and he's just. I honestly, I do not care about Chris, and all of the giant brawls with weapons and nonsense that are all over the arena. Most of them involve Chris Jericho, and it's boring.
And how much in all of these people, I'm going to name some people that have been associated with Chris Jericho, and tell me that they are more important now than they were prior to them being associated. Santana and Ortiz.
I can't even remember the last time I saw them, so no.
Sammy Guevara.
No.
Not because of Jericho, at least.
That's mostly because I just find him to be annoying and I want to see the babyface kick his ass because he's a heel in a, what are you doing? Just, why are you kind of way.
Jake Hager.
Again, like, when's the last time he did anything?
I cannot remember. I literally cannot remember. And speaking of things I can't remember, any of the guys with him now. Danny Garcia is the only one because Tony Khan is a moron.
Yep.
And that's it. And I don't think that Danny Garcia is any more important because he's with Jericho either.
And
Jericho's turning people off, and he's the one guy who was supposed to be the one who was the straight and narrow and help build people instead of joining and breaking down people.
At the beginning, he was great. At the beginning of AEW, it made sense to put the world title on because he was great. Yes. And then he just started becoming one of the worst parts of the show. And I'm not even joking, ladies and gentlemen. We just went on this entire tirade about Chris Jericho. Jericho's not even on my top 10 reasons as to why I'm done with AEW.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely one of the reasons, but he's not in my top 10. Because, like, again, that episode of that was the episode where CM Punk came back to confront Jon Moxley before they got into their feud, which also has a little bit to do with why I'm done with AEW. Because we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So, but anyway, that episode of Dynamite, honestly, like, the first match was fine. It was and I know you and Skylar probably wouldn't have liked it because it was Darby Allin versus Brody King in a coffin match, and there were buckets of blood. Buckets of blood.
To start the show.
To start the show. Not to end the show. To start the show.
Well, no wonder you got sick of it after half an hour in. What else was there to watch?
I mean, well, honestly, that match was not that bad. And the finish was actually kind of funny because he was like, Darby had Brody King, like, choked. He was, like, hanging him over the ropes with, like, a chain. And then he released, and Brody King fell into the casket, and the momentum caused the lid to shut just all in one shot. And it was like, they could not have got that more perfect if they tried 100 more times. So that was actually not that bad. I just wouldn't have had him bleed buckets in the first match of the show.
Yeah.
That was fine. What made me what basically cured my insomnia. The next match after that was Andrade El Idolo and Luchador Mexican guy number 15 versus the Lucha Bros in a tornado tag team match.
Boy.
And it was just move after move after move. But the exact moment that I gave up on the show, motherfucking Penta gives motherfucking Andrade a Canadian Destroyer on the goddamn apron, and 20 seconds later, Andrade's already back up punching people.
Yep. That's AEW in a nutshell, man.
And even JR was like, how was he back up? And when he got back up and started punching people, and then he went and won the match with his stupid DDT, when he got up and started doing moves, I just yelled at my screen, bullshit. And when he won, I shut the show off because I was done. And even before that, I was getting drowsy because nothing was happening except moves.
And that's really my biggest reason for hating AEW. I can't watch moves matches go 20 minutes all night.
And this was their regular TV show. I mean, at least on the most recent episode of Raw, we had Edge versus Damian Priest. Have you seen that match?
I have not seen that match, but I heard very good things about it.
It's very good. And at the end of the match, and also, just real quick to back up, when Penta gave Andrade that Canadian Destroyer, the crowd did not pop at all. No one cared, because they see 15 Canadian Destroyers per episode.
That move is dead, man. That move is absolutely dead.
That move is dead. The apron is dead as a concept. But on Raw, Edge hits the Canadian Destroyer on Damian Priest, and the crowd goes nuts. Because they don't do 100 Canadian destroyers in WWE. Edge has never done that move before, and it looked beautiful. And guess what else? That was the end of the match.
And guess what else?
He hits the move.
Edge is Canadian.
Yeah, and Edge is Canadian. And everyone was like, oh, Toronto, Canada, Canadian destroyer. Let's jerk off a little bit. It was great. And then Edge hits a spear, and that's the end of the match. We didn't have him hit the Canadian destroyer, and then Damian Priest immediately get up and hit a kick and a choke slam, and then the whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't matter. That was the end of the match.
For another 15 minutes.
For another 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That was the end of the match. So they at least did a Canadian destroyer to where it makes sense. Yeah, it was a little cheap to pop the crowd, but hey, it got a reaction. It didn't get silence.
But they also paced the match up to that point as well.
Exactly.
You know, they started slow. They worked up to it. They had fire. They had a back and forth. They had Edge finally getting a little comeback on Priest after he was on top for a little while.
Exactly.
You know, it made the whole thing mean more, and the most important thing that they do, which is something that AEW never does, they sold.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I cannot watch AEW where nobody sells anything.
No one sells anything in AEW, and it is maddening. And honestly, like, as soon as I cut the show off, I stopped, and I was like, wow, I can't even get through 30 minutes of AEW. I got through 3 hours of Raw the other day, but I cannot watch this show. And then this week rolled around. The past couple weeks rolled around.
Yeah, nothing happened this week. You know,
there's still a little bit of fallout.
There's no news whatsoever about the mental collapse of Tony Khan.
Okay. Everyone knows, or everyone that has watched TAW Gaming or the Car Marshall podcast probably knows that CM Punk is my favorite wrestler.
Is he?
Honestly, I don't even know anymore after the past couple weeks. But up until this past couple weeks, yes. But, okay. So CM Punk comes back, and oh my god. And then he proceeds to basically prove everyone that called him a whiny little bitch quitter, he proceeds to prove them all correct. Because I understand him being upset with Hangman Adam Page over his reference to Colt Cabana during their feud.
Yeah,
but that was months ago!
Just a little context here for the people. Word came out that, you know, when Punk came back, that Adam Page, during their feud with Punk and Adam Page kind of went on kind of a rambling tangent where he went into business for himself and mentioned the fact that CM Punk basically cost Colt Cabana his job. And that, of course, sat with Punk and sat with Punk and sat with Punk and sat with Punk until he finally comes back after he breaks his foot and goes into business for himself. Yeah. And calls out Adam Page and says, well, here, you want a rematch? Let's do it right here, right now. And, of course, he wasn't supposed to come out, so that didn't happen. And Punk said, that's not cowboy shit. That's some coward shit.
That was so cringy.
Now you may proceed with what you were going to
do. It's
just wanted to bring
so...
people to speed.
I understand Punk being mad at Page for doing that. But he already had his big blow up after that happened because he was like, I'm never going to job to Hangman Adam Page. Who does he sound like when he says that? I'm not jobbing to this man. Who does he sound like?
Shawn Michaels?
Shawn Michaels. He sounds like Hulk Hogan. He basically, even though Triple H never said this whole thing has basically turned him into Triple H.
Well, you don't know Triple H didn't say that. I mean, that whole run where he was just beating WCW guys.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he would have or would not have wanted to put any of them over at any given time.
I swear to God, for me, I feel like Obi-Wan and CM Punk is Anakin in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. You promised you would destroy these asshole conceited wrestlers, not join them. Bring balance to pro wrestling, not leave it in punkness. Just.
Now, here's the interesting thing. For those of you who want to hear my rants about CM Punk, it's on the most recent edition of the Core Motion podcast. So that's where you're going to hear me cuss out Punk.
Long story.
I'm going to try to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Long story short, his promo on CMP, which again go watch, was basically CM Punk is the biggest crybaby in the history of wrestling, and he's been handed basically everything in his career, and he still acts like a giant whining toddler.
Well, in short, that's basically what
and I agree
so
with that.
Words.
He was, I guess, my favorite wrestler, and I 100% agree with that.
Well,
but you may go ahead and play devil's advocate here.
I am going to play devil's advocate here because let's think about this from a different perspective. CM Punk is basically begged to come back by Tony Khan because he's not going to go join Vince and company, and that's a fact. Even though he did the talking smack thing for literally a hot cup of coffee, and he comes back to AEW, and all of a sudden people care about AEW. And as much as MJF was helping, what really started gaining attention, the real Hulk Hogan of '94 was CM Punk coming back. It was not Chris Jericho. The only thing that Chris Jericho and Hulk Hogan have in common is that they both leached off talent and kept them down in order to stay relevant in the business.
Yep.
But in any case, this isn't about Jericho. But like I said, every chance I get, I'm gonna do it.
I don't blame you.
But Punk is the only real known draw statistically. You can see it in the numbers. And Adam Page, who was on top of the company at the same time, and you could visibly see the numbers, was not good as champion. Nobody really cared when his segments were on. It didn't work with Adam Cole. It didn't work with pretty much anybody else that he faced.
Well, you didn't like the Texas death match with Lance Archer?
No, I did not. And the whole point was that Punk was basically running laps around Adam Page. And then for Adam Page to basically get upset knowing that CM Punk is running laps around him, but acting like he has to be tough and idolized, so he decides to do a little playground politics and go after Punk for something that was really unnecessary, whether true or not.
It is true, but it was really childish.
Oh, yeah, well, and here's the thing. It was super childish of Adam Page to do that, and think about who Page is friends with. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. And they know that CM Punk is running laps around them as well, and their ratings. And they don't like that. And they can't like that, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little powwow with the Bucks and keep in mind that the guy who set the template for what the Bucks and Omega do as far as the comedy portion of the wrestling is Colt Cabana. You know, he's kind of I don't want to say the comedic patriarch, but as far as the silliness in wrestling that we have now, that really goes to Colt Cabana. So I wouldn't be surprised if these three got together and told Adam Page, go out there and tell the truth because it'll make you more important in this situation. And Punk took offense to that. But I will agree with so would you not be as upset, especially knowing that you are really the only drawing person in the company at this point? Would you not be upset at Adam Page, who statistically is not on your level?
I would be pissed.
Level, it's something where I completely understand why Punk would be mad in this situation and why he would be upset about the situation at hand. Do I also agree, though, with your statement that what Punk did was very childish? Yes, because Punk's sitting on this for months instead of doing the adult thing and just confronting him about it in the back.
Which is what I would have done. That's what I would have done.
Which would have been the adult thing to do, is go have words there. If you got to fight it out, and then get on with your life.
Exactly. That is what adults should do. If it were me and someone, if I was in a feud with someone, and they brought up some real personal shit with me, and I didn't know they were going to do that, depending on what it was, of course, most likely I would go backstage. I wouldn't even yell at them. I would say, "Hey, what the fuck was that?" And I would talk to them. I wouldn't go on national television when they're not supposed to come out and say, "Hey, come out here and fight me, bitch."
And humiliate them and embarrass them.
That was the way he did that. Yeah, he made Hangman Adam Page look like a pussy, but he also made himself look like a coward, because if you are in the know about wrestling, you know Page isn't supposed to come out. And Punk, you know that Punk knows he's not going to come out, so he's basically pumping his chest out, saying, "Look how bad I am, because I know this dude's not going to come out and actually do something."
Well, and the other part of that is Punk threatened to leave
that
AEW.
That too. That also, And then, like, wow, Punk threatening to leave a company. I can't believe this, Sean.
Yeah. And, again, that kind of goes back to the point where Punk, at the end of the day, is never satisfied.
He's not.
There is no pleasing CM Punk.
Seriously.
And I think that's where we're at this point with him.
When you said on Court Martial Podcast that when he came to AEW, they immediately treated him like a god, you were 100% accurate. They made him basically undefeated. He's lost, 2 matches? And he's beaten how many people?
One to Moxley, I think, is it.
And they made him champion. They made him the top dog. They basically pushed Colt Cabana out to make CM Punk happy.
Yeah. Which was not also a very kind thing to do either.
Exactly, which also makes CM Punk look like a career-destroying asshole. Again.
But if I may play devil's advocate once again, was anybody going to watch AEW to see Colt Cabana?
That is true.
I'm based on his entrance into the Dark Order, which is just terrible.
The Dork Order that somehow still exists.
It's the worst gimmick. The fact that there's 4 of them now, but still, it started as 20 slugs. Remember the fake punches? The guy that came down and tried to punch, I think it was Adam Page, and literally just was like a rock'em sock'em robot.
Yeah.
And just, oh man, what a time to be alive. But in any case, my point is, nobody was going to watch Colt Cabana. People were going to watch CM Punk. And in that case, you want to concede to the star of that situation.
But the fact that Punk is if Colt Cabana is in the same company, I'm not going to want to be there. That's also insanely childish. It sounds like something Vince McMahon would do.
It's very petty.
And it makes me lose respect for him.
And I understand that. I totally understand that. I think that it's interesting because Punk knows that what his value is, which is something I do respect about Punk, is that he's always been his authentic self. If his authentic self is him never being pleased, whining, and leaving, then that's who he is. But he's never shied away from being that.
That is true. It's just, my thing is, back when he left WWE, I basically was on Team Punk. I was on his side, and everyone was like, boo, WWE, boo! Because there was a lot of bullshit that he had to put up with. However,
no one should be fired on their wedding day.
No one should be fired on their wedding day. And all the royalties that they were refusing to give him he was owed, he should be pissed about that.
However, the thing that I think is upsetting about this, especially with how the lawsuit just tore him and Colt apart, remember who got Punk the platform to speak his side of the story?
Exactly. CM Punk basically would not have been chanted for 7 years if not for Colt Cabana. CM Punk very likely would not have been basically a god in AEW if not for Colt Cabana.
It's true. And that's what makes this situation where it feels like everybody here is in the wrong. Exactly.
It feels like everyone in the AEW locker room is a giant, just waddling, crying, whining toddler that needs a diaper change.
And Tony Khan also has 0 balls, so he didn't have the balls to punish Adam Page for going into business for himself, and there's no way he's going to punish the only draw that he's got in Punk for going into business for himself. And that's also kind of what makes this such a thing. And everyone's like, oh, it's a work, and he's just turning heel, and he may be turning heel.
Would you care at this point?
Not especially. I mean, his work is always going to be solid.
Yeah.
Right? The thing is, it's let's make it clear. We are not discussing CM Punk in ring.
Yeah, CM Punk is one of the best in ring. He just happens to be on the mic and in the ring, he's one of the best in the world. But as what's his name? The dude with the Michael Hayes. As Michael Hayes once said, Punk can be a real moody prick. And that is true.
He like I said before, and Skyler was 100% right in this. He idolized Bret Hart, but he turned into Shawn Michaels.
Exactly.
Except he's straight edge instead of on pills all the time.
Honestly, if we found out that he was on pills the entire time, I wouldn't be surprised. Because look at him.
That'd be something.
He looks honestly as sick and dejected nowadays as Wolverine did in Logan, and Logan was literally being poisoned by the metal inside him.
And Punk already did the Wolverine look.
Yeah. It's all full circle.
Right before he left.
Yeah. It's perfect. Every time Punk gets depressed, every time Punk gets depressed and wants out because they're mean to me, he turns into Wolverine. It's his superpower. It's so weird.
Oh, man.
God.
That's fantastic.
And then this week happens. We had the not even the main event. It was supposed to be CM Punk versus Jon Moxley at All Out in Chicago to unify the Interim and the AEW World Title. But then Tony Khan's like, I have a big brain idea like I always do. Let's just do it in the middle of Dynamite for no reason. And then Jon Moxley squashes CM Punk in 3 minutes because CM Punk throws a roundhouse kick and, my foot hurt. And Jon Moxley's like, your foot hurt? Well, 2 Death Riders. 1, 2, 3, I win title.
Well, I guess you're fucked then, aren't you?
And I'm just like, fuck off. And this isn't me being mad because, my favorite wrestler got beat in 3 minutes. It's just, Tony, what the fuck are you doing with this championship? And then they announced that at All Out, it's still going to be Jon Moxley versus CM Punk again. Again. What? What?
And this is partially why I cannot endorse Tony Khan. Because look at the way he books. It's so schizophrenic.
Yes, and the second that I read the words on our group chat, that Skylar messaged the group chat, Mox squashed Punk. When I read that, I was like, I'm done with AEW. I'm done. This company is too stupid. This is the dumbest shit. This is the dumbest shit ever.
Sadly, I wasn't surprised.
I wasn't surprised either, but just, Jesus Christ, why?
But then, you talk about all the drama that's been leaked out.
I know.
Which is obviously happening, despite Tony Khan saying, no, everything's fine, because then he has the talent meeting.
Oh. And he was described as overly animated. Boy, I'm shocked.
We're at the point in our story where Eric Bischoff asked anyone who wants their release can get their release. And I'd ask you, JoshAgeddon, here on this day, what about Raven?
AEW sucks. Quote the JoshAgeddon forevermore.
Yeah, seriously, because this attitude was, let's talk about the locker room. And this is where I found everything to be very telling.
Mm-hmm.
And where I think this whole thing comes full circle and where this is being directed back to. Because Tony Khan is losing his damn mind, booking 4 shows, trying to figure Ring of Honor into all this, supposedly getting a 5th.
And remember that dude, who was that dude that Claudio defeated for the ROH belt that got into a screaming match with Tony Khan? Jonathan Gresham. I can barely remember what he looks like because he's that unmemorable. But he still gets into a screaming match with Tony Khan and quits. Because and then we get a report that Tony Khan is basically impossible to work with because he's on Adderall. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick.
People now have a hard time getting to him now, is what they've also said.
Well, yeah, because Tony Khan's like, wow, no one likes how butt-fucking insane I am. I might as well barricade myself in my office, Vince McMahon style. Just, oh my God. Real quick, Tony Khan, how old is this fucker? How old is this guy? How old is this man?
I will find out for you.
Tony Khan, at however old he is basically the equivalent of Vince McMahon at 77. It's hilarious that
Tony Khan is 39 years old.
This 39-year-old cokehead. This 39-year-old cokehead is basically Vince McMahon at 77 2.0. Except instead of dementia, drugs.
To me, this is a Tony Khan is the Dragon Ball fusion of 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
Bischoff, Russo, and Herb Abrams. And he's just one giant amalgamation of all 3. Because he's got the confidence of Bischoff, the ideas of Russo, and the cocaine-like effects of Herb Abrams.
And the unapproachableness of Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon, literally. He's literally the cauldron brew of all the toxic traits of promoters.
Exactly. And it's just... Okay.
Remember when he did the Big Swole?
Well, that honestly,
even though I'm not saying that Big Swole didn't deserve that, right?
it was hilarious. Honestly, that is the one where Tony Khan, why the fuck would you do that, you idiot?
Tony on his Twitter after Big Swole got released, and Big Swole made some stupid comment about how it was racially charged, and Tony Khan's like, I have black friends and I'm a different race.
Also, you are a suck wrestler.
Yeah, I fired Big Swole because she sucked at wrestling. Tune into Dynamite tonight.
Honestly, why in God's name would you do that? But I'm so happy he did because, my God, that was hilarious.
But we should have seen the signs then.
Exactly. We should have seen the signs remember when I went to that live show in Columbia, South Carolina?
Yes.
When he walked out on stage and was like, and next you guys are going to see CM Punk when we go on the air, instead of letting Punk come out there organically. And when he was on stage, me and my brother were both looking at each other like, who the fuck is this guy? Because he looks out of his mind all the time.
Yeah.
This man is going to... If Chris Jericho's not going to be the death of AEW, then Tony Khan already is, because he is the dumbest motherfucker on this planet. He gives
Smarks a bad name.
He is spellbindingly stupid.
Yeah.
Just between little things like saying CM Punk's coming out next instead of just letting CM Punk come out as a surprise. Why would you do that? Yeah. Booking this title monstrosity feud between Punk and Moxley where he has a 3-minute squash and then they're going to have a rematch of that 3-minute squash on their next pay-per-view. Just stuff like that. All the time. The endless multi-man trios matches that never stop. And then throwing a championship at that division.
Yeah, because...
Promising to make his women's division feel important and then having zero follow-up by having green people who suck at wrestling just on top looking at you, Jade Cardiff Wales.
Yeah, or Nyla Rose.
Oh my God, Nyla Rose. Or Riho. The first AEW Women's Champion was Riho.
Stick in a dress.
That's insulting to Sticks outside.
Well, but actually, that kind of brings me back to the point I was originally making about this talk that they had, this backstage talk, because the part that I took away from that was the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega going, well, you can always approach us. We're objective. We're human resources. We're going to obviously do right by you. And then you start to wonder just how much damage has been done having them in charge and having people like MJF, who I'm sure was no fan of those individuals, and Cody, who had grown probably sick of their bullshit, and now Punk, who has got to deal with this cliquey garbage that they're starting. The whole thing started because of playground politics with Adam Page that were unnecessary. And while I don't agree with CM Punk's response and how it was done, because as he said, the apology has to be as loud as the disrespect, but we're not going to get an apology from Punk, are we?
Nope, we're never going to get an apology from Punk, because Punk never does anything wrong. Punk is the ultimate victim.
But that's not the point. The point being is this all started because these playground wrestlers started playground politics. And you're supposed to go to them to handle all your talent complaints.
Yeah, good fucking luck with that.
And you wonder why these major people have been rumored to leave. And how long is it, especially with Triple H in charge, that they're going to start doing that? Mm-hmm. That people are going to start actually leaving. You know, WWE's already prying into their
and apparently the other day, Eddie Kingston did something backstage, and now Eddie Kingston is suspended.
Yep, because he smacked the taste out of Sammy Guevara.
This show, AEW, All Ejaculation Wrestling, is basically a box of fireworks that didn't go off properly. Things are just exploding, and everyone is in danger of dying.
The image of AEW, the ultimate image of AEW, is Eddie Kingston laying over Jon Moxley as sparklers light up the arena.
Exactly.
That is literally the definition, personification of what AEW is about.
And
all this hype, all of these major guys, everybody head for cover and just sparks.
And now, I just want to say a couple things real quick, because I know that there's probably going to be some people that just look at the title of this video and say, oh, well, you're just a WWE mark, you're this, you're that. As we stated at the beginning, I am not pro AEW. I am not pro WWE. I'm pro good wrestling.
I'm pro competent wrestling.
I don't give a fuck what company does it. If AEW does good wrestling, I'm going to watch it and like it. If WWE does good wrestling, I'm going to watch it and like it. If ROH does it, I'm going to watch it and like it. If New Japan does it, I'm going to watch it and like it. I don't care what company does it. If a company just churns out garbage, I'm going to hate it and bury it. For God's sakes, I'm a WWE mark. For how many years on both of our channels have we just shat all over WWE?
At least 5 years for you and me.
Exactly.
If not...
We have...
Since the Jinder Mahal WWE title run.
Yeah, and when he fucked up a Cobra Clutch Slam on Shinsuke Nakamura to win a match. We have...
the best match of the run.
We buried that company for years.
Yeah.
For years. And all of a sudden, I'm the WWE... And also, just saying, I don't want this also to be construed as... Because there's also going to be some people who are like... You're just turning on AEW because your friends Sean and Skylar don't like it. You're just changing your mind so they'll like you more. Bullshit. I'm 24 years old. I'm an adult. I am more than capable of making my own decisions. Sean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Sean.
No, there has never been a time when you have been influenced by what Skylar and I have to say.
Sean, I love you to death. And I tolerate Skylar. But whether or not you like or dislike something, that has no bearing on my enjoyment of it.
Right.
There have been multiple times on both of our shows where I've liked something and you hated it, and you liked something and I hated it. We're not going to... And I would never want you or Skylar to modify or adjust or lie so I'll like you more. Because that's very inauthentic.
Yeah, and that's not something that we do. You know, say what you want about us and what... however many subscriber counts we have, you know, but we're not going to be anything other than our authentic selves.
Yes.
And that's not going to change. So this is not something where Skylar and I have somehow just like hypnotically sent in the brainworms to infiltrate your mind so that you utter out the same.
Well, you're already hacking my show, so who knows at this point.
Well, let's not try.
He bribed me with an unlimited tap of Monster Energy.
The first rule of Project Mayhem is you do not ask questions.
But seriously, though. And also, furthermore, just saying, as much as I'm saying AEW sucks right now, there's a lot of people on that show that I really like. For an example, Skylar and Sean do not like Kenny Omega. Me, I've always liked Kenny Omega. There are some times when I think he's a little too silly, but I like Kenny Omega. And I'm totally fine with Sean and Skylar not agreeing with me on that.
Well, and also, for what it's worth, I don't necessarily hate Kenny Omega. I just don't... He's capable of having matches. I just think a lot of the stuff that he does just doesn't look sharp or crisp, and he tries to cover it up with all the exaggerated facials.
Mm-hmm.
And he could easily tone that up in a very simple way and not have the kind of criticism he does.
Mm-hmm.
But he's too much in his own head for that to ever really be a realistic thing.
But and also, like, I love Malachi Black, even though AEW has literally done nothing with him. How the fuck can you have Malachi fucking Black and not do anything with him? I like CM Punk, even though he's kind of souring on me because he's a punk petty bitch. I like Daniel Bryan. Well, we're all going to do that for the rest of however long Bryan Danielson wrestles.
Forever.
I love Bryan Danielson. I love Hook. I love Darby Allin. I like a lot of guys on that roster. But the show is an unwatchable mess.
Because they put them into positions that they're not supposed to be in.
1 year ago, this show was on fire. And now, 1 year later,
this show is literally on fire.
This show is literally on fire. It is a smoldering wreck.
At first, it was the trail marks at the end of the DeLorean. Now it's the meme where the guy's in the middle of the burned down house and he's like, this is fine. Basically.
And Tony Khan is the stupid dog sitting there in the middle of the fire just waiting for it to consume him.
Yes.
And he has so much Adderall and drugs and God knows what else in his system. Can you imagine lighting Tony Khan on fire? He'll go off like a nuke.
And here's the thing, too. They're coming to a turning point. Because now Discovery is going to look at AEW at the end of this year and go, are they worth keeping? To be fair, they're one of TBS's highest rated shows at 1 million. But at the end of the day, they just cut a $90 million product of, what was it, Batgirl? That they just shut down. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not going to do this after spending $90 million on it. And do you think they're going to look at AEW and see all of the footage that has been compiled and what they've done on AEW television and go, this is something we like. This is something we want.
I mean, WB just reached out to AEW like today and told them, hey, tone down the language. Which, honestly, of all the issues, they bleed buckets of blood literally every segment, and you have a problem with them saying shit every 30 seconds?
Well, it's just like everything else. It's used gratuitously, so it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So, which is my big problem. Nothing means anything on that show because it's all just done to oblivion.
Nothing means anything in AEW, and the show, on top of that, is just a giant clusterfuck.
Yeah, and now it's really just like, can Tony Khan start...
And at the same exact time, WWE has been steadily improving. Look at the card. Look at the card of Clash at the Castle. We have Roman Reigns versus Drew McIntyre. And that's going to be good. That's going to be good. That's money. Especially, not even joking, if Drew McIntyre comes out to Broken Dreams like he's been teasing on Twitter, I will literally impregnate Andy.
Oh, great.
And she's like 50 minutes away from me.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. I will be a mother.
Yeah, you sure will, bud.
And also we have, I'm not calling him Gunter, we have Walter versus Sheamus.
Hoss fight.
For the this is the first time, by the way, that the Intercontinental title will be defended on pay-per-view in like literally almost over a year.
Incredible.
The last time the Intercontinental title was defended on pay-per-view, it was when Apollo Crews defeated Big E at WrestleMania 37.
Wow.
Thanks, Vince.
Wow.
And on SmackDown, when they had Walter versus Nakamura, which was also a really good match in the main event of the show, they did a hype package talking about why the Intercontinental title is important. And on Raw, they did the same exact thing for the U.S. title. Because they're trying to make both of those titles, matter. Because if your titles don't matter, why do you have them? Meanwhile, on AEW, they're literally just churning out belt after belt after belt. We have the AEW World title, which makes sense. You gotta have that. You have the tag team titles, which makes sense. You gotta have that. You have the TNT title, which is practically worthless.
Yep.
It is a piece of fucking cardboard. You have the All Atlantic Championship, which the All Elite Wrestling All Atlantic Championship, that name sucks.
Yeah, and also it's unnecessary. What is this, a third-degree belt?
Well, that is a good question. We also have the Trios Tag Team belts, which also should not exist. We have the FTW Championship. We have the Women's belt. We have the Tuberculosis belt. We have belts coming out of the wazoo. I guarantee you they're going to have a Women's Tag Team belt as well.
Yeah, because that's going so well for WWE right now.
Oh yeah, and then they're going, and not only that, they're going to have a Women's Trios Tag Team belt.
Well, and that's another big problem that we've also got to add to the list of issues with AEW. The roster is monstrous.
Oh my god!
They have so many people because Tony Khan, and that's the Eric Bischoff third of him, hired anyone who ever felt in the slightest bit slighted by WWE and said, "Come work for me."
Literally hired any living, moving thing with a pulse.
Remember Miro?
Who?
Exactly. Exactly. And I feel for him. I genuinely feel for him because he was putting on some good matches.
He was great as the TNT champion. Then Sammy Guevara and the never-ending feud with Scorpio Sky.
His match with Danielson was great.
Yeah.
I love Miro and Danielson. That was, there were a moment there. It made me feel like they were actually using Miro correctly. And Miro, to his own admission, has been like, "Yeah, this sucks. The WWE treated me better than this." And imagine saying that. Imagine saying WWE treat Rusev. They put him literally in so many like love triangle. Remember the the love quartet thing with Dolph Ziggler, Summer Rae, and Lana. Rusev Day.
Fuck Rusev Day. But anyway,
Rusev Day.
2 words were more over than Rusev.
And that that was still better than what Tony Khan has done.
Exactly, because he had 2 good matches as TNT champion, and that was it.
Yep.
And that's just one person. That's just one person. Claudio Castagnoli comes in.
List.
Claudio Castagnoli, whatever the fuck his name is. Let's call him Antonio Cesaro, because Antonio Cesaro legitimately is a better name than Claudio Castagnoli. I'm sorry, Claudio, but Antonio Cesaro just sounds better.
And he would also have his full name if he was in WWE right now.
Yeah.
Just saying, because Angel Garza got his back. They're trying to get Matt Riddle back.
He won the ROH belt to Todd Grisham, and has done what since?
He hooked John Moxley in a pull-apart. That was pretty funny.
Samoa Joe. What has Samoa Joe done in AEW?
Lost to large Indian Khali person.
Adam Cole. What has Adam Cole done in AEW?
Sucked Buck's dick. That's what he's done.
Basically.
He's one of the people I literally went from being a huge fan of his to vehemently detesting.
Exactly. And honestly, you making him a fucking cuck bitch on ACPW is just the funniest thing.
Yeah. And will Shawn Michaels be able to turn his attitude around? Find out on the next episode.
Or the bare minimum, get sick of his shit and sweet chin music the shit out of him.
Maybe.
Just there's way too many people on that roster. I mean, Malachi Black, he's doing nothing. Pac is the freaking All Atlantic champion, and his first title defense was on Dark.
He's been there the longest too of any of those guys we just mentioned.
I was so happy at Forbidden Door, even though that show was largely shit. When he won something. He won something.
I know, about that time.
Oh, God. There's so many people on that show. So, to briefly recap, your boy JoshAgeddon, the perennial AEW defender, is an AEW defender no longer. And I'll be honest, I will watch AEW All Out mostly out of morbid curiosity. And who knows? Maybe the show will be good. Maybe. That still doesn't change my mind that this company is going down the fucking toilet.
Oh, and I think you're going to actually see that manifested a lot more on this show. Because the thing is, shows usually reflect how their backstage is.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell it in the eyes and in the hearts and in the souls of the people that are wrestling in it. And I bet you that we're going to find out a lot about AEW here in the next couple of weeks.
And honestly,
especially because Clash at the Castle is going first.
Exactly. And I feel like Clash at the Castle is going to absolutely steamroll All Out.
They go to teabag AEW before AEW is
incessantly.
Able to open its mouth.
They're going to incessantly teabag All Out.
It's going to be a Halo kill.
They're like WWE is going to get banned from a server. That's the amount of teabagging that's going to go on.
Yeah.
But
and another thing about Chris Jericho.
Speaking of teabagging.
Seriously though, because one of the things that's going to drive me nuts is that if/when AEW just completely tanks and fails, Chris Jericho is going to go back to WWE and go, I knew WWE was going to be winning the whole time. That AEW was Bush League, and we're the big boys play, and he's going to...
I was just trying to help them. They didn't listen to me. Why wouldn't they listen to me? Oh, the humanity. Oh.
Yeah, no, it's going to be the complete back thing, because Jericho has no choice but to suck up for job security.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what he's been doing with Tony Khan every time you hear him speak. Every single time, he is literally just hand firmly up the ass of Tony Khan and just pulling it out and just giving it a good whiff for all of his listeners.
And for those of you that are like, well, don't tune CM Punk out just yet. Maybe this whole thing is a slow burn heel turn, or just watch and see what happens. I don't care. The stupidity of them doing a 3-minute squash just to have a rematch at the pay-per-view with a week and a half of build, by the way.
Do you think that Moxley just squashes him again and then he just leaves?
If that happens, then I'm never watching AEW again. For my own sanity. I will laugh. I will laugh uproariously. I will laugh uproariously. But
because part of me suspects that this is what's going to happen out of this, and if I'm right, then you can go back to this video and say, wow, fucking Nostradamus over there. But I predict that this is going to be a match that Moxley's still going to win. And part of the talent meeting that was held was basically them saying Punk isn't going to be around anymore. And we are the executive vice presidents, and we are still going to be the top people of this company, no matter how small we have to keep it. And we're going to slowly but surely see more of the bigger names leave, like FTR. And we're going to see people that WWE has had any interest in, like Miro. We're going to start seeing the AEW exodus. I think coming up very soon.
Dude, we're already... There was a report like the other day where apparently someone from inside WWE contacted a member of the AEW roster asking them about their schedule and their contracts. And then AEW literally sent an email to Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon saying, "Don't you dare come trying to find our talent. This is a warning. Don't do that."
Oh, and that's the other thing about Tony Khan. His ego is so fragile.
Exactly.
So fragile. I mean, remember when they asked him about the potential of AEW talent going back to WWE? And he's like,
well, you see,
contracts, so I'd like to see him try.
I have contracts, and if they don't want to be sued into oblivion and fired, then they'll have to stay here under my thumb, Daddy.
Instead of saying, yeah, we're going to make AEW the place to be, so people aren't going to want to leave. We're going to make it a great place to work.
Or everyone that dislikes or has negative things to say about AEW, they're all bots. Hey, Sean, did you know that I have I did not know that I was a bot. Like, I must not be completed with my transformation yet. Yes. Maybe I'm waiting for that new iOS update.
I just like that new techno song out on the radio. Beep boo boo bop, boo boo beep.
Beep boo boo bop, boo boo bop.
Boo boo beep bop.
Jesus Christ. And what if CM Punk wins back the title?
Then what was the point?
What was the point?
I don't know. I don't see. Either it's going to be a stunner of a show, or it's going to be the
just
first nail.
Dumb as shit.
Very large coffin for AEW.
Honestly, no matter what they do at All Out, it's going to be dumb as shit no matter what they do. Because I have lost faith. This whole Punk backstage, we're all a bunch of toddlers who need a diaper change kerfuffle on top of the shows just being objectively just snooze fests. I have lost faith. They had so much momentum last year, and they have sequentially fucked all of it up.
And honestly, all it's taken is Triple H putting in minimal effort.
Exactly.
Triple H literally just stood up out of his chair.
Bro.
Tony Khan is losing his damn mind.
Literally, all it took was Triple H saying, "Hey, let's make a couple passable shows," and then all of a sudden, Tony Khan is like, "Oh God, oh God!" But oh God, it's like that meme of The Office where he's like, "Oh God, it's happening! Calm the fuck down, everything's okay." That's basically Tony Khan.
Oh, seriously though, that's the best.
Tony Khan is becoming Michael Scott, losing his fucking mind.
And it's so entertaining.
It's infuriating, but it's hilarious.
Tony Khan losing his mind is more entertaining than what the show actually consists
Exactly.
of.
They need to make, once AEW like spontaneously combusts, they need to make some kind of like the rise and fall of AEW, and it's literally just like, those what's the device that measures earthquakes? The Richter scale.
Richter scale.
They need to like have a Richter scale with like just Tony Khan's face on it.
They need an actual earthquake to horrify them.
Yeah. Oh my God. And honestly, like, again, if this is all a plan, if this is all a work, like a quadruple 4D chess work to turn CM Punk heel, I don't care. If CM Punk wins back the world title, this whole thing is going to be just pointless and meaningless and stupid, and I don't care. If Punk wins back the title and we end up getting Punk versus MJF again, if MJF comes back and they have a program, I'm still not going to care. Because they've so badly fucked everything else up, including this.
Well, at least to be fair to Tony, because we've been bashing Tony a lot tonight, but I will give him this. In segments where he knows the talent are going to knock it out of the park, like MJF and Punk, he's kind of let them direct their own bit shit.
Exactly.
To the point where that's why they've been draws on their television. And that's something that I will give him credit for. The booking of Punk has been good. You know, he knows how to do things incrementally. Like everything with MJF and Wardlow was good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they did.
That's another one.
Him, and now look how much Wardlow matters now.
I know. I was about to say Wardlow was like so hot like 2 months ago, and I have heard nothing about him. Did you even know that he's the TNT champion right now?
I did know that.
I think maybe I don't know. I haven't watched the show.
Not that it matters.
He's wearing a useless jockstrap.
But at the same time, he knew what to do when there was the right people involved to kind of help guide him to what it was supposed to look like. At this point, Tony Khan is now beyond the point of knowing how to do that with the people that he doesn't have anymore.
Exactly.
And that's why we're getting the kind of shows we're getting, and I just don't see it being sustainable.
I don't either at this point. And again, from like the past like couple of years, Sean and Skylar, especially Skylar has been largely anti AEW. He gives them credit whenever they do things right. Sean has been in the middle, leaning against AEW because they've been doing a lot of dumb shit. And I
want to like AEW.
I do too, bro. Like,
like AEW.
Bro, listen. You know, WWE is turning into a good wrestling show. You know what's better than a good wrestling show? 2 good wrestling shows.
Yeah.
I want both WWE and AEW to be must-see. I want them both to flourish and be great and have captivating stories and awesome matches that we can't stop talking about. I want them to book circles around us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want WWE to succeed and AEW to fail. I don't want AEW to fail and AEW to succeed and WWE to fail. I don't want them both to fail. I want them both to succeed. That's why we're getting pissed, because AEW is determined to circle the drain.
Yeah, no, it's literally, I have to quote Corey on it, but it's self-inflicted wounds.
Exactly.
All the time. It's literally a guy who's just like, he likes the idea of seppuku, but doesn't have the balls to go through with it.
Yeah.
He's doing little knife cuts to himself every
Oh, God, this got dark really quick. AEW's a cutter. But like they are shooting themselves in the foot so many times that they're eventually going to run out of legs.
Well, or finally, Discovery's going to not pick them back up.
Literally, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised because again, the AEW fan here, I could not get through 30 minutes of their programming. I literally could feel my eyes drooping during that tornado tag match.
Let me ask you this, kind of to close out this whole idea and close out everything we've talked about tonight. If they lose their TV deal, then what?
They might do a couple shows and then...
What do they do?
Maybe do a couple shows.
What do they have?
Remember before they got their TV deal where they just did a couple kind of pay-per-views?
Yep.
They might do that for a while until they eventually have to fold.
I would honestly like AEW more if they went back to just doing one show a month.
Yeah.
Because at least you could handle some of that in small doses.
Either way, I'm not fucking watching. I'll watch All Out, and depending on that, like right now, when I'm saying I'm done with AEW, I mean like I'm done pretending that this is a good show. They have Skylar and Sean have not changed my mind about AEW. AEW has changed my mind about AEW because this shit sucks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch All Out, and that might be the last AEW show I watch.
Well, we're right behind you either way, all the way.
Absolutely.
But this is it's gonna have to be a hell of a show. Like Triple H got me to watch SummerSlam after swearing off of WWE. After I basically gave to Shawn Michaels "I lost my smile" speech after WrestleMania 38 Night 2.
Oh God, that show. Okay, as much garbage. As much garbage as we've been giving AEW right now, they have yet to produce a show as bad as WrestleMania 38 Night 2.
I've never seen a show that bad in my life.
It was worse than every movie I've ever watched.
Yeah.
It
was the worst show that WWE's ever done.
Like, have you ever played Bubsy 3D?
No, I have not.
It is like one of the worst video games ever made. It was more entertaining than WrestleMania 38 Night 2, and I'm not even exaggerating.
That's pretty brutal.
It was but all of a sudden Vince McMahon's gone for the most part. He still has some stock shares. But Triple H is doing everything he can to right the ship. He's trying to get it to stop sinking. Meanwhile, Tony Khan's over here literally pointing a machine gun at his ship and firing indiscriminately, putting so many holes that's going to be impossible for it not to sink.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a next 3 months. I mean, the end of 2022 could be actually disastrous for AEW if they don't figure out a way to steer this ship and get something going here. And
ladies and gentlemen, I will say, if the day comes that AEW loses their TV deal, they start even more badly hemorrhaging wrestlers that they have, talent that they have, and they fold, we're going to do a sequel podcast, the I Told You So podcast.
Yes.
We're going to do the Death of AEW podcast, if it happens.
Without a doubt.
It might not happen. Maybe they'll get a clue. But we've said.
Hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't.
I hope it doesn't. Maybe they'll get a clue, but we've said that before.
Yeah, we have.
What I think's gonna happen, I honestly think the way things are right now, I think that they're going to keep their TV deal somehow, and they're just gonna keep putting on just missable or awful shows. And then they're going to lose, like, maybe a couple 100,000 more people, and they're just going to be... It'll get to a point where their show's going to kind of just be there. You know how TNA was for a while, where their show wasn't bad, but it wasn't good? It was just kind of there, and no one really watched it?
I do.
I feel like that's where AEW is headed, and it's just going to do that for a while, and then maybe they'll be in danger of losing their TV deal. And then
keep alienating stars like this, and what do you think's going to happen?
I think they're going to go the route of AEW, where it's just going to be a slow decline, where they're not going to just completely drop off the face of the earth. They might constantly make you wonder, oh my God, is this when the axe drops? But I just think they're just going to steadily decline slowly and slowly and slowly until they get to where Impact is now, where basically Impact is somehow still there, even though they have no audience. They still do shows, though.
It's like the NWA.
Yeah.
After Cornette left.
Yeah.
And that show just lost all of its following.
Yeah, basically. I feel like that's where AEW's headed. I don't think it's going to die, like, full on, just they're going to have to fold, and it's just 100% WCW style canceled. I just think it's going to go the Impact route of it's going to keep sinking and sinking until it barely has an audience, but it somehow is still on the air. And the smarkiest of smart marks are going to be like, but it's actually really good because it's not WWE. That.
Yeah, and they will be wrong.
Yeah.
And honestly, at this point, I think there's going to be a lot of people starting to go back to New Japan proper.
Yeah.
To watch, which is some of the core audience, because what they're doing is they're shitting on the core audience too.
Yeah.
Because they don't believe that any of them are intelligent in any sort of capacity. They feign like they think they're intelligent, but really at the end of the day, they're just getting spoon-fed whatever Tony Khan slops at them.
Yeah.
And nobody has the balls to tell but that's also another part of this. And part of AEW that pisses me off, and then I'm done ranting about AEW. There's so many backstage personnel in that show who know what they're doing. And how is it that none of them can get to Tony Khan or get through to Tony Khan?
They have William Regal. They have
JR.
They have JR.
Billy Gunn.
They have so many people back. They have Mark Henry.
Dustin Rhodes is still there.
They have Dustin Rhodes. They have Big Show. They have so many people backstage. Christian Cage.
At least he's been used. Christian's been used.
Yeah. They have so many people backstage that should know how this works.
Malenko, Arn.
Oh my. They have Arn Anderson. They have your commissioner. Kind of, maybe. We don't. That's a story that's still developing over on ACPW.
That's right. But in any case,
they have Taz. But Christ Almighty.
And this is where we're at with all of those people there who could. If Tony Khan was like, I'm just gonna run the business and I'm gonna let all of you handle this. I don't care who handles it, and just literally dropped his notebook in the middle of the arena and walked away. 5 people of those people we mentioned could pick it up and make it.
They literally do. They literally do what they did with the 24/7 title when they introduced it. They just put in the middle. They just put Tony Khan's notes in the middle of the ring, and then all the backstage guys just come and fight over it and start doing a bunch of roll-ups.
Yeah.
I'd watch that.
But if one of those people got the book, like JR or Arn Anderson, or they all collectively actually made a committee to be like, okay, we're gonna do this right.
The show would immediately get better.
But Tony Khan, this is a vanity project for Tony Khan.
Exactly.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Remember how
action figures, and now he cannot stop writing his little notebook and putting names on pieces of paper like he knows what he's doing.
Remember how a couple months ago, until recently, the biggest problem with WWE was the guy in charge of it, Vince McMahon. Right now, and for a while now, what has been the biggest problem with AEW? The guy in charge of it, Tony Khan.
Yep.
Just saying. Remember when Tony Khan's biggest selling point of AEW was Vince McMahon is not in charge of this. Well, congratulations, Tony Khan. You are now Vince McMahon 2.0, plus Russo, plus Bischoff, plus Herb Abrams.
I wonder how many people Tony has slept with. Probably 0.
But I would guarantee you he has nothing to worry about. I guarantee you the Me Too movement has nothing on Tony Khan. Guarantee you. Remember when CM Punk was like, the only way MJF's going to get anywhere is if he marries Tony Khan's daughter? Tony Khan would have to have a daughter for that to happen.
Yeah, which does not happen.
I mean, adoption's a thing. Can you imagine Tony Khan adopting you?
I think he's got enough on his plate as it is.
Oh, God.
I would be like, hey, listen, I'm like 5, but I'm a dip.
Dad, Adderall is not for children. Dad.
Put the pills down, Dad.
Stop trying to put them into my food, Dad.
Put the pills down, Dad. I said put the pills down.
My head hurts. Give me Tylenol. Stop giving me cocaine, Dad.
Yeah.
My nose hurts, Dad.
This got really dark. That's 3 strikes of darkness.
Well, we need to elevate this show to its climax.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Long story short, thank you guys so much for watching us just ranting like lunatics. Long story short, Joshua has officially tapped out on AEW. Hopefully it'll get better. It probably won't. I'm going to watch All Out and it'll probably suck. Maybe it won't. I don't really care.
Prove us wrong.
Prove us wrong, AEW, because now you have all 3 members of the Court Martial podcast saying you suck. You used to have an even mix. One saying you're good. One saying you're sometimes good, sometimes you suck. And one that's saying you suck. Now you have 3 people saying you suck. You've completely lost that balance.
Yep. You were saying you bring balance to wrestling. Not leave it in dark jokes.
Not leave it in kindness.
Oh, God damn.
You're my wrestling show.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. Not just to TAW Gaming and the Totally Awesome Podcast. The Court Martial Podcast, the Colonial Impact Wrestling, even though they're fucking with my show all the time.
You're welcome.
Like, comment, and subscribe, and all that fun stuff. I should probably start doing Adderall at this point. I don't know. I'm tired. Good night, everybody.